Hey YouTube, how's it going? This is Danny Travels, and I am Danielle Leviston, otherwise known as Danny here. I am a travel enthusiast. I plan travel, I solo travel, I group travel. So if you are interested in learning more tips about planning your own travel experiences, I'll call them travel experiences, you can tune in right here to Danny Travels. Also, if you are a woman who's interested in learning more about traveling safely while traveling domestically or internationally, this will be the place to be, especially this video. But my content can be geared towards anyone. If you're a man or you don't identify with a gender, you can absolutely come here because my tips transcend gender. There will be times when I will be specifically speaking about Black women in travel because that's my lens, that's my perspective. So, feel free to stay if you are not a Black woman at this time. Well, I won't say at this time, but feel free to stay at this time if you are not a Black woman. Okay, but I'm coming from my lens, so tune in if you want. I encourage you to stay. Interesting story before we get started. First of all, like and subscribe. Okay, like and subscribe to Danny Travels. Make sure that you send this video, you share this video, you spread the word, especially to your friends and family who love to travel as well. So I know you want some travel tips. I know you want some travel planning tips. So come on in, come on in, come on in. As you can probably see, I am in the beginning stages of really growing this channel. I started the channel a couple years ago and then things fell off. I had a lot going on. But 2025 of my year is my year of consistency. That's what I'm claiming. That's what I'm claiming on January 21st, 2025. So we gonna see what happens, but we're doing some challenges. We getting things done. So okay, so I think we're gonna just go ahead and get right into it again. Like and subscribe to the channel, and share, share, share. All right. So today's topic is going to be geared towards. Let me rephrase that. Today's topic is going to be about how to be safe while traveling solo. And more specifically, how can you be safe while traveling solo internationally? Now, my first international trip was actually a solo trip. Interestingly, interestingly enough, right? So I chose to go out of the country. I chose my first time out of the country solo. A lot of people were like, "What's wrong with you? Did you feel scared?" I absolutely did not feel scared. Okay. Now, I think part of that is just the person that I am. As long as there are people, to me, as long as there are people around and those people are welcoming, I don't feel like I'm alone, right? But there are still some things that I think I did prior to traveling which set me up for success. And some things are hit or miss. So that's why I'm here to share with you my tips. So these are going, actually I have 6 tips. I'm sure there are more. And I know I'll think of more afterwards. I want to keep the video of course to a certain length. So I might revisit this topic. I'm sure I'll revisit this topic of being safe while traveling solo. I'm sure of it. But I just want to, I might get some anecdotes um from my personal travel as I go through these points with you. But yeah, we're gonna go ahead and get into it because I mean, to full disclosure, I thought I was recording and I was talking for maybe like 3-4 minutes, and I looked and I wasn't even recording. So now that I'm recording, we're gonna go ahead and get started. Okay. So once again, tips for you to feel safe while traveling solo internationally. Okay. Again, you can still use these domestically. And I am really looking at this from the perspective of a woman, but this can relate to anyone, okay? So, and then I don't think this is in any particular order either, okay? But this one might be number one, actually. And there are some nuances, okay, to this. But choose number one, okay? I know some of you guys like to number things, right? Number one, choose a generally safe destination to travel to, okay? So, there are websites where you actually, I have my computer here. So let me go because I don't want to give you the wrong information. Um, but there are websites that you can go to figure out where generally safe areas are, right? Such as hold on one second. Oh, such as each travel destination's government website. All right. So I am actually on the U.S. Department of State, and where the travel advisory. Oh, there they are. So the U.S. Department of State, and that's travel.state.gov, has an entire list of travel advisories. And I do believe that, like, let me see, if I click on one of those, let's see, okay. So, like Mongolia, for instance, and I actually don't have any interest in visiting Mongolia. Maybe I should look into it because they're level one. Hold on. I would go to New Zealand, but I'm gonna give Mongolia some love. Let me click on Mongolia. So Mongolia, it says travel advisory as of 2023. Exercise normal precautions. So really, this is a fairly safe area to travel to. Now, I'm gonna add a little something to that. If you're a black woman like me, you also want to do a little bit of investigations as to if that area feels generally safe and welcoming for a black woman or black people in general, okay? So there are some countries that you might be interested in visiting, and then you look it up, and or let's say you get there and everybody's staring at you, which is common in some places, but you just don't feel overall comfortable. So there are levels to this, right? When we're thinking about safety in a specific country. So, for instance, um, I have heard questionable things about certain cities in Spain, and then other cities in Spain are okay, right? Generally, I've heard that most cities in Italy are very welcoming towards Black women. Thailand, right? I've heard that Thailand is a very welcoming country for Black women. So most areas in um, Mexico are very welcoming to Black women. So you have to kind of use discretion with that. But as far as like crime and things like that, like Mongolia, it says exercise normal precautions. Now, again, I am on the travel.state.gov website. It's the U.S. Department of State. Um, and I'm sure that each country has their own. I believe I've been on their individual, like the places that I've traveled to, I've been on individual sites and they've said similar things. So let me find one that has a level 4. I think it goes without saying, the one I just saw. So let's see. Somewhere somebody really might want to go to. Hungary has level 1, right? Let me go to a place that I'll find a level 3. And you know what? Okay, so Trinidad has a level 3. Let's see. Oh, okay. So this is something I can relate to. Currently, Guatemala has a travel advisory of level 3, which says reconsider travel. This was as of December 30th, 2024. So it says reconsider travel to Guatemala due to crime. Some areas have higher risks. Read the full travel advisory, and they actually tell you which cities, and some a lot of areas have zones. So like in Guatemala they have different zones. Um I believe in different countries in Mexico, they also have zones. They broke down into zones. I haven't been to Mexico a lot. I've been once, surprisingly, right? But I know in Guatemala for sure they break. A lot of countries have different, like they break them down into zones though. So um, now the city where I went, um, Antigua, Guatemala, is not on the do not travel to list, and Guatemala City is not on the do not travel list. Now, it says gangs, robbery, carjacking, drug trafficking. Now, okay, so this is what you read, but you still want to have discretion. So, along with looking at the travel, because honestly, and I don't want to spend too much longer on this. I might have to break this video up. That's what I might have to do because I don't want to, I want to give you the info. I don't want to spend, but I don't want to make this video that long. That's what I mean. Now, this is only part of that because there are places in the United States where, like Chicago, could easily have a do not travel to list and a level three travel advisory, right? But I live here, or I live in the area at least, and I go down into Chicago a lot. I was just in the city, and nobody was standing outside like waiting on me to come out trying to rob me. Okay, so you everywhere you go, you have to use precaution. It's just that if you are traveling solo, those level one, maybe level twos, might be a little more um, conducive to your travel, if especially if you're like a first time, second time solo traveler. Now, I do not remember the Guatemala travel advisory when I went, but the other component to what I did was I went to I searched YouTube. I looked at different travel vlogs on YouTube, and I saw a lot of really great things about Guatemala. I saw great things about Antigua, Guatemala. I only went from Antigua, Guatemala to Guatemala City. I had to fly into Guatemala City and then travel to Antigua, Guatemala. If I'm correct, I gotta go back. I gotta go back. No, I believe I flew into Antigua and then I flew out of Guatemala City. I gotta go back. Y'all tell me what I see if you watch the video because I don't remember. But yeah, I mean, you just have to use discretion. And I really do advise travel vlogs. I wish I had some names in mind that I could give you. I probably did actually in my Guatemala review of a few vloggers. I am going to be vlogging some more. Do people still call it vlogging? I think so. But I'm going to be vlogging some more, so stay tuned. But yeah, there are people who like just like I'm doing right now, who specifically go to places to see if they're safe so they can vlog about them. So, just you have to, you can't just look at the travel advisories. You really have to look and see people's personal experiences. Maybe you have a friend who has traveled there recently to wherever you're thinking about going, and they can give you some tips on where to stay. So definitely figure out if I won't even say country is safe because that's very broad and that's a generalization. Saying if something's safe or not is a generalization in itself. So I would say, more specifically, the city that you plan on being for a long period of time. Check to see if that's generally safe. But again, follow up with those YouTube videos. Follow up to see if you're a black woman like me, if it's generally safe for you to travel to just based on the color of your skin and black people in general. Or maybe if you're a person of color, if you're brown skin, right? And you are going to maybe a European country, you want to make sure it's safe for you in that respect. But most places outside of the US are generally safe when we're thinking about like racism and things like that compared to the United States. So don't get too caught up in that. All right, so that was a lot. I spent 15 minutes on that topic, but I did want to be thorough. And, I do also want to be culturally sensitive. So I want to make sure that I let you know these are generalizations, and you really have to use discretion and figure out what your comfortability level is with other cultures. Okay, so second thing, and I'll try to, I'm gonna break this up. So let me see where I want to go next. Um, you got, you guys have to give me a moment because I want to see where I go next. Okay, so I think this is how. Oh, I might have to make this video longer. I'm at 15. Okay, the next ones can go a little quicker. Okay, so the next thing, be discreet and use discretion with who you tell your. Let me rephrase that. Don't tell everybody that you're solo. Okay, don't tell everybody that you're by yourself. And just really use discretion and be discreet about who you tell you're actually, you're by yourself, because the last thing you want to do is go to some country by yourself and tell everybody that you're by yourself. Everybody doesn't need to know. And sometimes it feels good, like, oh, I'm by myself, I'm solo, I'm doing all this cool stuff. I gotta let everybody know. Um, and I'm really like, I'm not, maybe I should be a little better about this, but I'm not that type of person who feels like I have to look over my shoulder every second. But if you're one of those people, I wouldn't even like post on social media until the trip is over. Now, I don't think that your friends are going to come to wherever you are and then track you down. Okay, so I know some people don't really like to do that. But if you're like a vlogger, if you plan on vlogging and your content is public, maybe you don't want to do that. But I actually mean like while you're on the trip, like don't tell your taxi driver you're solo. If they ask, say, oh, I'm waiting for my friends to come in tomorrow. Now, there's no way to get around like the hotel staff knowing that you're a solo traveler, because they're gonna see that nobody else is listed on that reservation, right? So you might want to say, "Oh, my friend is coming in. We're staying in, they're staying in a different room." But 9 times out of 10, they gon' So that's where discretion comes in. Like I wouldn't tell the people changing the towels, or you know other people around that I was solo, unless it was like front desk. And you don't have to say anything, really. You really don't. And if you don't feel comfortable, you don't have to say it. So again, it's all about your level of comfortability. And actually, what I said about the hotel, people at the hotel, that's going to lead into my next point. But yeah, you don't have to go around telling anybody anything. And if you want to tell someone that you're traveling solo, you could do that. For instance, one of my, well, the taxi driver that whose services I used in Curacao, she was a woman, and I felt very comfortable talking to her. She was giving me a lot of different tips. She actually picked me up, before she picked me up from the airport. She picked me up when I wanted to go into the downtown area in Curacao, and then she took me to the airport for my return flight. So I felt very comfortable around her. I'm actually going to shout her out in another video at some point. But and if you're interested, if you're going to Curacao, you want to know, just shoot me a comment, and I can give it to you for sure. That'll help me remember to go back and look for information. But I told her I was traveling solo, and we talked about that, and so it's really just up to you and your comfortability. But that's another tip. All right. Um. Okay. So stay. The third tip. So that was number two. Be discreet and use discretion when disclosing that you are traveling solo. The third is to stay at a reputable resort or hotel. I think for the most part, I've done this when I've been traveling solo. I think maybe when I was by myself in Panama, I was kind of like I, first of all, I like being and staying, I don't, what's the expression? Not off, like I don't like, I like resorts, but I feel like there's a time and a place, and sometimes I want to be among the locals and like see how the culture is. So I wouldn't necessarily suggest only staying at like resorts. I don't want it to come off as that way, but really look into the accommodations and like really like if you're on travel TripAdvisor or Expedia, wherever you're looking, make sure that you really take the time to look through reviews and make sure that those hotels that you're staying at um, are top notch. So I would even go so far as to call the hotel, or depending on, of course, where you're staying. But yeah, really just do your due diligence to figure out. Like I don't know honestly if I were solo, I don't know if I would actually stay in an Airbnb just because someone else owns that, and maybe you feel fine with that. That's fine, depending on who the owner is. But I do think that staying in a hotel, preferably like a chain, would be better for you, especially if this is like your first time traveling solo, or if you're nervous. Stay at a chain hotel like a Hyatt or a Hilton or something like that, something you can find in different places. Now, when I was in Guatemala, I stayed at the Selena, which is actually a hostel and a hotel. Some places you go to may not have like heights and hotels like running rampant, right? So you might have to dig a little further. I actually love the Selena. I know not all Selenas are made equal. I liked where I was at in Antigua, Guatemala. And when I say Antigua, Guatemala, is the city is Antigua, Guatemala. The country is Guatemala. So some people get that confused and just call it Antigua, but it's more to it. Um, but the Selena has a lot of different international destinations. You just have to, once again, look at the reviews, go directly to the website, look at the reviews. But of course, like TripAdvisor and Google, they're going to have, I think, more honest reviews, right? Or at least you can be rest assured that most of the reviews are honest. So definitely stay at a resort that not like a little rinky dink. It's maybe 5 hotel rooms or something. You don't want to get wrapped up in, oh, this looks exotic. And I don't want to say that in a disrespectful way. Excuse me if that came off disrespectful. But some people can think like, oh, this is exotic, right? Or this is different. Let me stay here. When they really should just stick to what they know. So that's what I meant by exotic. Um, but yeah, that's the third tip. So number one is go to a generally safe destination. Number two is be discreet with who you give that information to. And three would stay at a reputable hotel or resort. And of course, look up reviews. Um, Number four, I'll say, is book tours while you're by yourself. You don't have to, just because you're traveling somewhere solo, you don't have to be solo the entire vacation, right? So you definitely want to interact with people. You want to interact with the locals. You want to interact with other people there. You never know. Everybody's not scary. So, like, I should have broke those two sentences up. What I meant was, you never know who you're gonna meet when you're there, and everybody that you meet is not going to be scary. A lot of people are not going to be scary. Okay. Um, so it was cool because when I was in Antigua, Guatemala, I booked an ATV mountain tour in advance, and I met like another teacher who was also on spring break, and he taught social studies. I'm also a teacher as well, if you didn't know that. Um, Let me see. And I think Curacao, I was this Curacao? I'm sorry. I'm mixing my mixing my trips up. I did a lot of tours in Guatemala. I did not do a lot of tours in Curacao. I did quite a lot of just solo moving around and stuff. So but I could have. So book tours. You might book a cooking class, or you might book a walking tour, or maybe you want to do. I did a photography tour in Guatemala that was cool. So book tours. Don't be afraid to be adventurous either. Like I did volcano hiking in Guatemala. So don't be afraid, because you do meet some really cool people, and you can share like your travel experiences, or you can get inspired by those people as well. So don't be afraid to book tours. That way you won't be solo your entire trip. Cause who wants to like do certain things alone, right? I get it. Not everybody's uh I wouldn't call myself a hermit, but I'm what is it? Ambiverted. I call myself an introvert sometimes, and sometimes I'm an extrovert. So, and really, like traveling solo is really not about being introverted either, because really, you have to talk to more people if you are traveling solo, because there's no group representative. You know how in a friend group you have somebody who always talks. You don't have that. So in some groups I'm that person, in other groups I'm not. So like it's all about you. You have to communicate with people. So actually, if you do decide to go on solo trips, you're probably more extroverted than you think. Okay. All right. So book tours. So I would encourage you, go on TripAdvisor, go on search up different companies. Like let's say you do want to do an ATV tour, you can do a Google search and see what reviews they might have. Some of my tours I book in advance, some I wait until I get there. And it was crazy because like right outside of my hotel, like it was crazy. As soon as I walked out the back of the hotel when I was in Guatemala, there was actually the tour company right there. And I realized I could have just booked right there, but it's okay. All right, so where we at? All right, we're at 27 minutes. Let me see if I got two more tips. Okay, I'll go to this one. Oh no, let me go. Let me go. This was actually going to be a bonus tip, but I would advise you to schedule your transportation in advance, especially when it comes to getting to and from the airport. There's some hotels offer that service where they'll book taxis for you. You got to be smart about taxis though, because some cities in certain countries do mark up their taxi fees, and I think they try to hustle you. So you really have to like look up the information in advance about how much things will cost. One time I was in a bind when I was in Panama, and I was just doing stuff, and I ended up getting a taxi that the hotel reserved for me, and it was I think it was like $60. They got me bad, and I was mad. I said, "Sir, there's no reason why this trip should have been $60." I was coming from the airport. If I had done a little bit more research in advance, I probably could have seen, could have looked into some other things. Um, but yeah, schedule your driver. If you're not renting a car, right? If you're not renting a car, I advise you to schedule your driver in advance, just so you know who you're communicating with. A lot of like private taxi services or private shuttles, they have WhatsApp accounts. So if you're in a country where you definitely can't call them like that, you can WhatsApp them, and they will communicate with you in advance. So investigate between like your hotel, maybe the airport, and then the private taxis and private shuttles they're really good because you could also request to have rides with them as you're going to and from while you're in the city that you're in. Now, I say taxis and things like that is because not every country and not every city that you go to is going to be an Uber heavy city. So there's some area like Curacao was not about Uber. So that's why I use the taxi service. Um, I think in I think Guatemala. I was able to get an Uber. I have to look back at that because I had to get back to Guatemala City because I was flying out of Guatemala City. But yeah, some cities and some countries do not do Uber like that. So you do have to look into taxi companies. Now, I can't tell you whether Uber or a private taxi service is going to be, if more is safer than is one. Sorry, I can't tell you if one is going to be safer than the other. I really can't say that. I can't say that generally. I will have to see more about the country and the city to kind of gauge that. But yeah, I would definitely look into that. First, look and see if the country and city that you're going to it has Uber, and then of course look into the taxi services and schedule your drivers in advance if you can. Sometimes you can't schedule them in advance. But the last point. So there's actually a bonus I'll give you after this last point because this won't take too long. And this is of course specifically if, well, no, I won't say that, but women are more concerned with being out at night. And women are told more not to be out at night. Unfortunately, this is how our world is, and this is how our country is. Um, but regardless of what country you're in, I do suggest you try not to stay out too late at night. This just helps you feel more safe. If you are gonna go out late, I advise you, like, one thing I advise is, you know, um, oh, yes. So going back to the hotel, make sure your hotel is actually located in a nice, safe area. That's another one. So I gotta jump back, but that's number three. But make sure your hotel is a nice, safe area. Again, looking at Google reviews, looking at the zones, that can help you figure that out. But what I advise you to do is, once you find out that your hotel is in a nice area, see if there are like restaurants and shops and places to go that are nearby. So just in case, you do get hungry and you don't have anything to eat, you can walk down the street at 10 p.m. and get something to eat and then come back. Um, but yeah, I advise you not to. I wouldn't. For me, and this is again a personal thing, and maybe other people feel fine, I wouldn't necessarily go out and club at night. Now, there are actually some tours depending on where you go. I did see some, and this makes sense, in Cancun. I think I saw some. Tulum, I believe I saw someone. I haven't been to Tulum yet, but I was doing some research. I think there are actually tours on like TripAdvisor where you can do a night outing with people, and that way you're in a group. So that's a cool thing to do if you're concerned about being by yourself at night, is do a group kind of club outing if you love the club. I don't have to be in a club like that. So this is why I can kind of, write that off the list. But at one point I do kind of want to try those if I'm solo. One of those little clubbing tours. I think it'd be fun. Excuse me. My bonus. Okay. So my bonus is, so that was the first. I'll recap. So number one was choose a generally safe area. Number two was be discreet and use discretion about who you're telling that you're actually there solo. Number three is stay at a reputable hotel or resort or hostel. You might choose to stay in a hostel with other people. And also, as a sidebar, make sure it's in a safe area. And you have to do your research there. Um, that was at four. Number four was book tours with reputable companies or companies that you've researched that have good reviews. Number five is try to schedule your transportation in advance. Not always, excuse me, not always feasible, but try to. And then number six is try not to stay out too late. All right. With, of course, contingencies, I think I can use. Now, the bonus, here's the bonus. Here's the bonus. The bonus is to travel to a country. And in some cases, you might also have to think about the city that you're going to too. But travel to a place where English, if your primary language is English, travel to a place where the primary, or at least one of the main languages is English. Because what you don't want to do is get to a country and then be afraid because you can't communicate effectively with people. Now, I have kind of done this, and like you, I resorted to like Google Translate. Um, but you have to think there are some areas if you don't get, your phone taken care of, forget what that's called. I think it's getting a SIM card from that particular country. But if you don't do that and switch your SIM out, so depending on where you are, your internet may not work well. Your 5G or whatever you have may not work well. So translating may not always work. So my advice to you, if you're a beginning solo traveler and you want to go out of the country, and I would advise you to choose an area that or a place where English is one of the primary languages spoken. It would um, it would help cut down on a lot of confusion and mishaps while you're there. So that's actually something I don't think a lot of us think about when we're playing. We see these beautiful places and we're like, oh my God, I have to go there. And we just, go. Now, the way to get around that is to, of course, book tours, but you're going to have to navigate being in the airport, uh, calling for a ride, right? Certain things, getting from one place to another, being in the Uber, being in the taxi. So, otherwise, brush up on your skills of that language. So, I'm not advising you to not learn different languages because I'm actually brushing up on my Spanish, even though I took a couple years in high school and college and good. But I'm taking time to brush up on my Spanish, and I've been speaking with my students in my class to get a little better at it. You see, okay. Looking at the time there, but yeah. But for those of you who it's your first time, um, good. Let's say maybe you've been to, maybe you know Spanish pretty well, and you're going to a Spanish speaking country, then fine. But if you don't know that primary language, you may not want to make that a solo trip. You might want to do that with somebody else or with a group. So that is my list. I'm sure I'll think of some things once I end this video. But if you're an avid traveler and if you have any tips for other people, post a comment, put in a comment for them because we don't want to gatekeep. Now there are some things I'm of course may forget. Some things I may not say on this here YouTube, but primarily speaking, I'm generally speaking, I'm gonna try to give you the good stuff. So, but if you have any tips or suggestions for my viewers, I encourage you go ahead and post a little comment in there. If you have any questions, let me know as well. In the future, I want to have some guides up, like little travel guides and things like that, just elaborating more on certain things with different resources from, the places that I have been. So look out for that coming in the near future. But again, this is Danny with Danny Travels. Very excited to get this topic out there. Again, like and subscribe if you have not liked this video, and if you have not subscribed to my channel, make sure that you do so and spread the word. I will talk to you later. Have a wonderful rest of your day.